Now, this is the Fox 11 News at noon.
All right, coming up, 4 long months after the massacre in Las Vegas, there are still so many questions.
Coming up, Brian Claypool is with us. He's not only a lawyer representing some of the victims in the shooting, he's a survivor of the massacre himself. We'll speak to him next.
More than 4 months after the Las Vegas massacre, federal investigators do not appear to be any closer to figuring out why the shooter, Stephen Paddock, did what he did, the motive. The mass shooting left 58 people dead and more than 700 injured. And just yesterday, newly unsealed documents have revealed the name of a second person of interest. It is the first time that name has come up in public.
Frustrated victims looking for answers are calling for an independent investigation. Criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool represents some of those victims. He is also a survivor of the Las Vegas massacre, and he's here with us now to talk about this. Before we get to this, the unsealed documents with the person of interest, you just showed us you have your band, your wristband on from being at the festival. What was your experience that day, that night?
Yeah, I still have my wristband on. I was just to the left of the stage, and I had actually almost left a few minutes before the shooting because I had an early flight back the next morning, and I decided to stay, and initially heard some sounds, and like everybody else, thought it was fireworks. But at that moment, and I've learned this through my therapy, that I looked right into Jason Aldean's face. Boy, there was a next round of pops, and I saw him just cup his guitar under his shoulder, and he ran off the stage, and man, it was chaos after that. I was dodging bullets. I could hear the bullets pinging. I could feel the energy from the bullets. And I thought I was going to die. As I told you before we went on, I have a little girl, single parent, 11-year-old girl. I did not think I would see her again.
I think it just dumbfounds people, and I know you represent some of the other victims now, that here we are more than 4 months later, and we have nothing. There are no answers.
Yeah.
What does that feel like?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I represent nearly 40 victims at the moment. But let's put aside that. Not only do victims want answers, but people across this country want answers. This is the worst mass shooting in the history of our country, and we're getting no information. But not only that, very little information, but we're getting misleading and contradictory information. By that I mean, remember from day one, Sheriff Lombardo from the Las Vegas PD, he got out and proclaimed, this is a lone wolf shooter, we're positive of that, and he then went on with his business. Well, you just mentioned these unsealed documents. Well, lo and behold, in these search warrants they were seeking, they were looking at this guy named Doug Haig in Arizona, who's selling a ton of ammunition to Stephen Paddock, the shooter. So why were they looking at a second person of interest behind the scenes when they're telling the public, oh, this is a lone wolf shooter? That tells me there's another agenda behind the FBI and the Las Vegas PD. I'm sure you've heard that phrase, money's at the root of all evil. Well, I think that's going on here. They need to preserve this image of Las Vegas. They need to propagate this theory that this was just an aberration, some older white dude, nothing to do with terror, so that people across the world will come back and continue to spend billions of dollars in Vegas.
Is that not feasible, though? It could be this lone wolf guy that acted alone, that didn't talk to anybody, he was a hermit, and that really is the answer.
It could be, but I will tell you, I find it hard to believe, and a lot of people I've talked to find it really hard to believe.
Okay, so let's talk about this guy, Doug Haig, you say his name is, from Arizona. So if he did in fact sell Stephen Paddock ammunition, what makes him a person of interest specifically? Well,
because he's selling a massive amount of ammunition to Stephen Paddock. So anybody with a brain in their head and has a set of ears has to think, or that's a red flag, that there's something really bad going on. That's very unusual for somebody to be buying the amount of ammunition that Paddock was buying. So that would lead a reasonable investigator to think, well, maybe he has some knowledge of what's going to transpire in the next couple of days. But the problem I have, and a lot of survivors have, and people across this country, is the credibility of this investigation. The first thing that homicide investigators learn is to preserve evidence. If you look at what's happened in this investigation, it's borderline a train wreck. What would be the heartbeat of this investigation? The hard drive of Stephen Paddock's computer. How do you lose that? How does that disappear? That should be the most important thing you should find. How does law enforcement miss that?
And you think tourism plays into this,
right?
Oh,
are you kidding me? That's the sentiment of people across the board who I'm representing, and people who I've talked to across the country.
Would it be unorthodox to have a completely separate independent investigation in a criminal investigation like this, to just throw it to someone else to do it?
Now, what do you guys think? This is the worst shooting ever in our country. Here's a good answer to that. How is it that Las Vegas Metropolitan PD doesn't even hire the homicide division to investigate this? I don't know if you knew this. They hired some unrelated division within their police department to investigate this. They're not even trained to investigate a homicide. So why are they investigating it? It's not unusual for something of this extreme. And even in the civil arena, or remember the Penn State scandal. I went to Penn State. They hired a separate William Free, separate man to come in and investigate that. Why do we not have a separate group of law enforcement, private, who has no tie to the state or federal government, to investigate this shooting?
Well, we have to leave it there, Brian. We're glad, obviously, that you made it out alive, and hope you get through it.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
And hopefully eventually we all get answers to this.
Certainly.
Thanks so much, Brian.
You bet.
Great
Thanks.
to see you.
We'll be right back.